So, what do you attribute your ability to be so active and successfully active to?
I would say that's generally just my drive, my willingness to learn. I really want to learn more and more about the sport, more about what I can do, how this technique can work. Well, what can I do to set that up or get them to think I'm going to do this and then do something else? It's been my training partners, my coaches, my team, because seeing what they've done is a huge, huge inspiration to me.
Yeah.
So I started out the free week at Easton, but then I didn't get my membership at Easton for another 9 months.
Okay.
But at the time, they offered a free Saturday kickboxing class. So I would go to that. Once I found out, I was going to that every week for a good number of months straight. And one of my coaches there, Wes, who I didn't mention earlier, he was one of the biggest inspirations for
Wes
me.
Argro.
Wes Argro, yeah. Knowing that he was fighting, seeing what he was accomplishing, and he was bringing back belts. He brought back a belt from the TBA from A class.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, that's amazing. I'm learning from somebody who's really, really good at this. And that drove me to try to do as good as I can at learning and trying to perform as well as I could.
Welcome to the Prize Fighting Business. I'm your host, Daniel Caycedo, and today my guest is Muay Thai fighter and Nok Muay, Chino Dean. Chino has 9 Muay Thai fights overall, and he trains with Easton Muay Thai in Boulder, Colorado. He's currently preparing for the biggest tournament of his young Muay Thai career, as he'll be traveling in 1 week to Des Moines, Iowa, June 20th through the 23rd, for the TBAs National Muay Thai Tournament. He sat down with me to have a conversation about his preparation for his upcoming fights, his martial arts journey up to this point, and what's next for him in his Muay Thai career. So let's take a look at my conversation with Nok Muay, Chino Dean. Chino, thank you very much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. So you are currently in preparation for the TBA National Tournament, is that right?
That is correct. This is my first time trying this out, so I'm really excited about this one.
Very cool. First time in a national tournament.
In a national tournament, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
And what does training look like?
Training for the most part has been, I'm training 6 days a week. We do a lot of road work in between our training as well. But Monday through Saturday, I'm doing either classes or I'm doing sparring classes and working with the team, a couple of pad rounds with my coaches. So really, it's kind of like I have a 9-to-5 job.
Wow.
And then after that, it's my other job.
That's a lot of balance.
Yeah, it's kind of the way I treat it, but it works out for me.
Yeah. And so you mentioned pad work with your coaches. So you train with the Easton Muay Thai team, and you're primarily located out of Easton and Boulder?
Yeah, I do most of my training in Boulder. I have a really good relationship with all of the coaches there, so I really enjoy working with them and with all of my teammates there. I do a lot of work, and I try to help everybody come up to the same level that I've been able to get to. So.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it that maybe a lot of people don't see, the aspect that not only are you training on making yourself better, but you're also helping your not your opponents, but your teammates prepare for their own matches.
Yeah, exactly. One of the biggest quotes that I've really liked to use is that high tide raises all the ships. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, I do what I can to give back as much as I can. I'm not the best teacher, but I do what I can to give back.
Yeah, and the better your training partners are, the more they can push you. And,
exactly.
And the greater your level rise too.
And then we all continue to get better together. So that's the goal.
Cool. And you mentioned that you have a strong relationship with the coaches in Boulder. Who are your primary coaches there?
My primary coaches, I would say Sean Madden for sure. He's the head coach. Then we have Steve Eisman and Danny Wilson as well. I do a lot of work with him. So those are my main 3 there. And then we also have Terrence. We have Matt. I do a fair amount of work with him. So I enjoy working with them for the most part.
A lot of Muay Thai experience there, gentlemen that
between all of them, yeah.
Yeah, compete at the highest levels with your main coach, Sean. Even Danny Wilson is a pro Muay Thai fighter, so
Yep.
Steve Eisman was on the show recently, so a lot of experience in
And several of them have fought in Thailand and everything. So they've got a lot of the goals that I want to have. They've already done some of those things, so it's good to have.
And they understand the training required to fight at that level?
They do. And they definitely push me to that point to make sure that I'm getting the work in.
Yeah. So you mentioned you're working out 6 days a week specifically for this. You're doing skills-based training, sparring, along with your road work. What does the road work look like for preparing for a fight?
So we have a 6-week or so program that we implemented a couple of months. I'd say about the beginning of the year is when we really started heavily implementing it. And it starts out a little bit lighter with just, mostly jogging and just kind of working on getting some reps of push-ups, squats, and things in between that. And then the further you go in, the more you start sprinting and kind of simulating that heart rate that you're going to be up and down and up and down. And by the end of it, you're doing more sprinting than you're doing anything else, really.
Huh. So it's a high-intensity interval training?
Yeah.
Okay. So what would week 1 look like?
Week 1 is, I would say it's mostly just like jogging for, twice the time of your fight, just a little bit of light stuff. And then you want to go for, I believe you're doing a little bit of Tabata sprints where you're doing 20 seconds on and then 10 seconds off. And then just kind of balancing that. And then, yeah.
And then over time it simply ramps up? Is that the idea?
Pretty much it just ramps up to about week 3. I would say week 3 and week 4 are one of the hardest ones because you're still developing the pace, getting used to it, and it starts having you sprint half miles at a time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. And you have to do those based on the number of rounds that you have in your fight, and then they start adding on, so you have an extra round or an extra 2 rounds, and so it definitely feel it while you're training, but I kind of look at it as you get a little bit better, either mentally or physically as you keep going.
Interesting. So you feel like it not only pushes you physically, but mentally as well?
Yeah, definitely pushes you mentally. I mean, that's one of the biggest parts of fighting in general. You have to have a strong mindset in order to get in there.
How do you feel like you develop your mindset? Is it running, or do you do anything else to kind of hone it in?
Really, it's all of it. The running helps because I make sure while I'm running, there's nobody there with me. I might have a teammate nearby or something, but I'm the only one doing the running. So I have to make sure I push myself. But then also in training with my teammates and outside of the gym, I always make sure that they push me and I push them, and they do a fantastic job of that.
Yeah.
And outside of the gym, I just try to keep a strong mindset, focus on my discipline, making sure I'm not slacking off here and there too much. And so you just try to push yourself, make sure you're in the right mindset constantly, gearing towards what you're going towards for the fight.
And what does that mindset look like? I mean, are you trying to be relaxed outside of competition? Are you trying to kind of get ramped up mentally and focus on the prize? What does it look like for you personally?
For me personally, it's more relaxed than anything. I would say in a fight, you want to have intensity, but the more relaxed you can be, the lower your heart rate can be.
Yep.
The more you're going to be able to see things coming, react positively, rather than be tensed up and then trying to just power through things. Because while power is good, it's not necessarily what the sport is all about of Muay Thai.
Yeah, and I think you see that a lot with the experienced Muay Thai athletes, especially with the Thais, how relaxed they are, and it looks like it has a significant benefit to the cardio as well. Not only are you pushing yourself outside of the fight with your road work, working on your cardio, but you're also focused on the mental aspect and relaxing and that assisting with the overall ability to maintain that cardio throughout the fight.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of my biggest things that I've noticed is that, especially around the local Colorado scene, is that clinch work is something that not a lot of people are advanced in the sense that they get very, very tense in the clinch. And that's the opposite of what you want to be. You want to be very relaxed. You want to be centered and balanced, because the more tense you are, the more you're going to try to push through, and then you're out of balance. And then somebody can just turn you out and sweep you or do whatever they want really with you.
Yeah, I'd agree. From my experience, it does seem that a lot of the Colorado gyms have an area that they can improve in, being the clinch. Why do you think that is, that it seems to be a struggle area?
I would say that's just kind of the culture that we have over here in the western part of the world, where a lot of us focus more, a lot of the fans, a lot of the athletes, they focus more on MMA. They want to go into that style, whereas in Muay Thai, it's just striking, so you're looking at a whole different mindset of it. Muay Thai is all about the balance and all about the control and everything. And power is good and everything, but you want to be balanced and controlled because everything comes from that balance.
Yeah.
Whereas in MMA, it's all about doing damage and inflicting your will upon the opponent.
Yeah. And so your gym, is the clinch something that you guys focus on?
We put definitely a fair amount of focus and emphasis on it.
Okay.
It's not the only thing that we work on, but we put a lot in. I mean, at least once a week we're doing clinching, and when the lessons come around for clinching, we focus on it for 2 weeks straight, whereas some other ones only get about 1 week. So.
And when you say you focus on it for 2 weeks straight, is that like the program structure? It's 2 weeks on, 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's about 2 weeks straight. So the program structure, we go through all the different sorts of weapons, all the different ranges. We try to work our way from out, working with round kicks. We get a little bit closer, work with our boxing. working with switching stances and everything. And then after a certain point, we're working entries into the clinch. So technically, we're actually almost working 3 weeks of clinch work because we work our way into the clinch, and then we work what you can do once you're there into the clinch. So.
Okay, so you're training once a week clinch standard throughout the year, and then you also have these 2 weeks that rotate in where you're focusing on the clinch and the skill development.
Yeah, we do our once a week training in the clinch, or possibly even twice a week, depending on how the week's going. We do that with our team training because, again, we always want to make sure that people who are training, who are preparing to fight, know that they can use the clinch, know what to do in the clinch there. Yeah.
See. So at Easton Boulder, you mentioned that you're doing this clinch in the team training. So what does training look like? Are you taking classes? Is it one-on-ones with a coach? Is it a competitive environment? What does that look like?
For about 3 days a week, it's mostly just classes. I'll just come in and I'll work on whatever they're throwing at me and just kind of refining my technique.
Okay.
And then 3 days out of the week, the other 3, I'm working on harder training. So I do one class where I'm still working on my technique and everything, but I'm more so pushing the pace. And then when we get to our team training, our sparring, it's about kind of focusing on the mental aspect, knowing what I can do, working on those things. And then we push ourselves. Like Thursdays, we do a lot of drilling and conditioning work to where we're making sure we're getting tired as we can be. Because, and I look at it this way, in the fight, as soon as I step forward, I'm going to feel that little bit of fatigue. Mm-hmm. So I have to know how to push through that.
Yeah. So in training, you're trying to get to that point of fatigue that you feel during the fight, and then be able to,
if not more,
and then still work on the skills through it, focus on technique.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way I also look at it is that the training should be harder than the fight. There's no reason that you should be training easy and then try to show up to a fight, because the fight is not going to be easy that way.
Yeah,
it's only going to be easy if you're pushing that much harder throughout the training camp.
Yeah, and it sounds like these training camps are pretty intense for you. I mean, the road work alone.
Yeah.
Is that a daily occurrence, the road work?
Yeah, we do that. It's still Monday through Saturday,
sure.
So we get the
week,
Sunday off to kind of relax and recover ourselves out. But yeah, it goes on 6 days a week where we have to do that in addition to all of our class and training and all that.
So how are you balancing that? Are you getting that done in the morning and then going to practice in the evening? What does a day-to-day schedule look like for Chino?
Me personally, I don't really like getting up early in the morning to go for a run or anything like that. I did it early in my life where I went to the gym and I tried out, and I did feel better throughout the day. But time-wise, it just doesn't really seem to work out for me right now. I'm up at about 5:30 in the morning to get ready for work.
Oof.
So doing any running before that, I'd have to be up way earlier than that to get around. So I do something that probably not a lot of other people would want to do, whereas I work my 9 to 5 or 9 to 4, and then I get out, I go right to the gym, and I immediately do my road work. I get maybe a half-hour break, something like that, and then I start class. So I don't have much of a break in between my road work. It's almost like I said, the second job where I'm just training, just pushing myself. And I do that for the most part 6 days a week.
That's intense.
Yeah.
So how long is the running taking? You get there at 4. How long does that take?
It all depends on the day, because some of them are just jog twice the time of your fight. So that's an easy, 15, 20 minutes of work. Whereas sometimes we have about 20 sets of sprints with also push-ups and squats and things in between. So that can take up to literally about 45 minutes to an hour of me just in there pushing myself and running, and then doing push-ups, and then back to the running, and then so back and forth.
And that's before practice?
And that's before practice, yeah.
And then how long is practice?
Practice is anywhere between 2 hours. Sometimes we have an hour and a half class, and I'll just do one of those depending on the day, or it'll be about 2 hours, 3 hours depending on the day, yeah.
Wow. So all in all, you're in the gym for 4 hours potentially on any given day.
Pretty much any night throughout the week, I'm in there for 4 hours. The only day I'm not in there that long is on Saturdays, when we just come in, we do our run, and then we do our sparring together.
Wow. And like you said, you've experienced, or you've at least tried out running in the morning, and you feel better with this structure? Yeah,
this has worked for me. I've been fighting for the past almost 2 years, really, and that's pretty much the schedule I've been on, and I've found a way to make it click and work out for me.
Cool. So you've been fighting for 2 years. How many fights do you have?
I've got 9 fights so far. I've done 5 smokers and then 4 official fights.
And these are all Muay Thai?
These are all Muay Thai, yeah.
Cool. So 9 fights, and your upcoming tournament is the TBAs National Muay Thai Tournament in Des Moines, Iowa. It's about a week, June 20th through the 23rd. and you'll be traveling with 6 to 7 other of your teammates. Is that
Yeah, I
right?
believe there's going to be 7 of us going out to that, and
Okay.
we've got a really good bunch. Each of us kind of have our own different strengths, and that really helps out when we're preparing for the TBAs here because you want to be prepared for any type of opponent. While Muay Thai and MMA, like MMA, they kind of gear towards specific opponents in their camps and everything. With
Sure.
Muay Thai, I feel it's better to be ready for whatever you have coming your way
Yeah.
because really you never know if you're going to have a fight until you step in the ring. So something could happen, something could change the day before.
So you focus on your strengths.
I focus on my strengths and being prepared. I do focus on my weaknesses too to try to build those up to a certain level. But yeah, you want to focus on your strengths and know what you can do with any sort of a person in front of you.
Yeah, so you mentioned that, you don't really prepare for an opponent, but do you look at who you're potentially going to fight in a tournament like this?
To a certain degree, yeah. I've looked into who's in my weight bracket just to kind of get a general idea.
Yeah.
One thing I do know is that I have a couple of southpaws, which is nice.
Interesting, okay.
Because you don't necessarily run across them all that often. But in my career, I've seen to run across them a little bit more than other people, which is good because that prepares me for them.
So you have experience with with southpaws already?
Yeah, my very first opponent and my first smoker, he's not a southpaw, but for some reason he decided to come out as southpaw for most of the fight.
All right.
And I remember at one point in the fight, he went to orthodox, and I kicked his leg back out. And I said, no, you go back to southpaw. This is my stance over here.
Yeah.
My second opponent was an actual southpaw. So again, it just back to back. I was like, okay, what am I going to get? Nothing but southpaws every time I try this?
Yeah.
But that's great because it gave me a different mindset than I was seeing in the gym at the time, and it let me work around some of the things that I didn't quite have a chance to work on yet.
Oh yeah, valuable experience for sure.
Yeah, very valuable.
So do you change the strategy during the fight when you're in there with the southpaw versus someone that's orthodox?
Yes and no. I mean, again, you still want to be able to attack on all levels. You want to be able to work your weapons and set them up for traps. So in that sort of sense, no, that never really changes. But yeah, obviously there's some things you can't do with the southpaw that you can do with an orthodox person and the other way around. So you kind of have to adapt to what they're initially bringing to you. But then, of course, as the rounds go on, you have to adapt to what they've given you and what you've done that's worked, what hasn't worked. So
yeah, absolutely. So you're 9 fights into your career here, going for this TBA national tournament, Des Moines, Iowa. How many people would you have to fight potentially in one night to win the championship?
In one night, it would only be one fight at a time.
Okay.
I've currently only got 7 people in my bracket, which is not so bad. I'm not sure how they would do it on the other ones. I think they would actually have to fight twice on the first day. But for me, it's looking like I would have to fight the Friday, and then I would fight again the next day, so about a 24-hour break, and then fight again the final day on the Sunday for the championship.
Okay, cool. Well, good luck.
Thank you.
And so Steve Eisman is the assistant coach on your team. He was here recently, and he was telling us about how they recently changed the rules for amateur Muay Thai in Colorado, specifically in Colorado. But essentially 0 to 3 fights is what they call C class, 3 to 10, 12 fights is B class, and then above that is A class. So you'd be competing in B class?
Yeah, I'll be fighting in B class for the tournament here. And then essentially, once I take my first step, I believe it's 9 fights is what they set for Colorado.
Okay.
So once I take that first step into the first fight, I'm officially stepping into A class from that point.
Ooh.
So it's also it's a new thing for me, so I'm excited about that too.
Yeah, congratulations. So that is a very big deal. You're going to essentially be in A class. A class is, A class to pro. I mean, anyone could really be in that. So it's kind of open format at that point for you in your career?
It is. It really is. And I've looked into some of the names that I've seen in my weight class from pros, from some of the Friday Night Fights cards that are going on in New York.
Yeah.
And actually one of the guys, the Black Panther, he's going to be at this tournament fighting in A class. So that'll be interesting to see if I can get a chance to watch him a little bit.
Get an eye on some future potential opponents.
Potential opponent, yeah.
Cool. So, but you'll qualify to fight and potentially win the B class at this tournament.
At this tournament, yeah, I'll be fighting the whole way through. I'll be in B class.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, how does the rule set change for you from C class to B class, and then what will the rules be for this fight for you?
This one here is actually going to be my first fight with elbows officially, because as you said, they just recently changed the Colorado Commission rules. So any of the previous fights I had, no elbows were allowed.
Because those were all in Colorado?
Yeah, because I've only fought in Colorado so far.
Nice.
And It's going to be a big change for me because I specifically like working the clinch. Again, we work a lot of the clinch, and I've just really fallen in love with it. But I haven't been able to use all of the weapons available to me.
Mm-hmm.
That still didn't change, how much I loved it. So at this point, it's going to be my first time using elbows. It'll be an interesting experience because I've been working with them a lot over the past 2 months to really kind of sharpen those tools up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you feel confident going into this, and it sounds like you're looking forward to the opportunity to be able to use the elbows.
Yeah, I'm feeling relatively confident about it. I mean, we've got a strong team, and we do a lot of work in all sorts of areas. So as soon as we knew that the elbows were going to be opened up, we started working on that, ways to implement them, what we can do to avoid them, defend against them. And yeah, I feel confident about it for sure.
Yeah, you keep speaking to the team's approach and your team environment. It sounds like you feel very confident with the team that you have built around you and the strength of your training partners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Does that give you more confidence going into a tournament like this, knowing that you have that kind of experience around you, not only in your training partners but also the coaches?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I lean on is my team, because even though I'm the only one stepping in there in the ring, I have 2 coaches in my corner, 2 or 3 coaches who are my eyes and ears during the fight to be able to see what I can't necessarily see. And then outside of that, I have my teammates who tell me what they see in training, who can work on this and that. Because, again, the more sets of eyes you can have on you, the better, that you can get your work done.
Yeah. So when this episode comes out, it'll be about a week out from your fight. So how long is a normal training camp for maybe a fight, specifically this tournament, but also how does that compare to just a normal fight?
I would say the normal fight camp is probably about 6 weeks for us. Depending. I think at one point I had really for the TBAs, I knew I was going to do it, and it was about 8 weeks out. But at 6 weeks out is when I started to really focus and say at that point, we're not really learning new techniques and trying to work on things like that. We're more so sharpening our techniques and using what we know and just making sure we have it down to a set rhythm and everything.
Very interesting. So what it sounds like you're saying to me is that you guys work on skill development outside of fight camp, but in fight camp, you're not really trying to pick up new skills. You're trying to refine the ones that maybe you're good at, maybe that are your strengths, and focus more on just getting in fight shape and getting fight ready.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily get out of fight shape, which is a good bonus because then that makes that part easier. So then I really get to focus on just sharpening up the tools that I have, making sure the things that I know that I don't do as well or things that I know I do well, that I can improve all of those.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you've been fighting for 2 years and you already have 9 fights. So you've had those 9 fights over the past 2 years.
Yeah, I've basically been nonstop ever since I started. It's been quite a journey, honestly. I didn't really expect it to go this way, but I'm having a hell of a time, so I can't stop it.
Yeah, is that the plan? Just keep letting it roll?
Yeah. At the beginning of the year, we kind of had a discussion amongst the team to see what our goals were, and the way that I've been looking at this for the past probably year or so is I want to take this as far as I can go. So that means, fighting out in Thailand, fighting across the country, fighting really anywhere I can across the world to see better opponents and see what I can do with myself, because I believe that a better opponent will obviously make a better person out of me.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So is that something that you're doing with your coaches and your teammates as far as goal setting?
Yeah, we all try to have a certain amount of goals, to see, how many fights you want to have in a year, or, what you want to do with this program, how can you give back, and all sorts of areas like that. I mean, it's something that we want to make sure that we're not just here trying to fight, because fighting is good and all, but it's more than just fighting. It's a sport. It's a culture.
Yeah. So have you been to Thailand yet?
Not yet. It's one of my big goals. I'm hoping to get out there within, I would say, the next year. So
cool. So the goal would be to go to Thailand in a year, and then would you fight over there?
Yeah, I'd say I want to kind of play it by ear when I go there. I definitely want to train out there for sure, enjoy some of the sights, but we'll see what would happen if I get a fight, when I was out there. I'm not even sure how long I would be able to go for yet. I'm hoping that I can get out for maybe like a 2-3 week stay to actually enjoy myself and really learn some things from the Thais when they're training.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm definitely very interested in taking a fight in Thailand at some point in the future.
Sure. So if you went, would you use that as like a fight camp for a U.S. fight, or would you just go for the experience?
I would say probably for the experience more than anything, because I know that there are definitely differences in the way that they fight and the way they view the sport compared to the way we view it out here. And I like both of them. I appreciate both of them, but I don't know if they mix as well when you're back and forth.
Yeah, that makes sense. So do you watch like Muay Thai fights on TV, on YouTube or anything?
I
Or?
watch a fair amount. I'm not actually as well learned on my history in Muay Thai with some of these fighters as I should be, or as I'd like to be anyway. But yeah, I watch it regularly. Like I mentioned before, the Friday night fights, I'll watch those a lot. I will try to watch some of the things from the stadium fights as well. They've been putting a lot of stuff on Fight Pass, which has been really good.
That's right. I forgot about that. What is that? Absolute Muay Thai?
Absolute Muay Thai, yeah.
And those are Bangkok fights.
Those are really good fights, too. So
level.
you get to see a lot of what they're doing out there and kind of the differences between that and what we do out here in the States. So.
You know what else I really like? I like to watch Max Muay Thai while they do a workout or something. Just put that on TV and they're speaking in Thai and stuff. But you get to see a lot of the foreigners versus the Thais and see that difference in style like you were speaking to.
Yeah, I actually haven't seen as much Max Muay Thai yet, but it's something I'm very interested in. I did watch my coach Steve's fight.
That's right. That's right. He did great.
Yeah, he did. He really did. That was a hell of a fight, though. It proved to me why I still don't really want to fight Steve.
Well, he's big, too.
He is.
So cool. So this will be your 10th, potentially 11th fight if you go that far. So then next would be A class. What would that look like? I mean, the transition to A class for you. Would you take a fight in Colorado? Would you be looking for another national tournament? What would be that next step?
I would still be looking for fights here in Colorado because there are some really good people. One thing that's really nice about being a smaller guy my size, we can't really rely on our power. While we might have power in certain areas, we're not throwing knockout punches constantly. So we have to be more technical. And that's something that I've run into across pretty much all of my opponents, where we have a lot more technique and a lot more focus on that than some of the other ones. So it's been very good for me to develop certain things. So, I forgot what I was going to say.
Just the transition to A class with that.
That the transition, it shouldn't be too difficult because I feel like it's been kind of a steep curve along the way.
Yeah, on the front end as far as learning.
On the front end, yeah. So I feel like I should be ready to a certain degree for some of those things I would see in A class. Now, I don't think I want to, jump into somebody who has 40 fights right away, but I still do want to go from here and try to get the best out of Colorado and then continue and do some of these other national tournaments because there are plenty of other ones that I haven't, touched on yet.
Yeah, so get experience on the local scene while kind of seeking out these higher level national tournaments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. And do you feel that you have a good amount of promotions that give you opportunity to fight in Colorado?
There's one main one. It's the 5280 Muay Thai.
Okay.
As far as the amateurs, the smallest level. And we've just kind of opened it up to the point where people can go back and forth between 5280 and some of the other promotions that will do Muay Thai fights as well. Sparta Combat League, I believe, is one of them. So I have interest in fighting for those promotions. And I also want to make my way eventually over towards Lion Fight and try to fight for them and things like that. So I'm also interested in Friday night fights too and seeing how I can, get myself over there to fight because, again, I want to fight anywhere I can in the country and try to just gain that experience as much as I can.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lion Fights is one of the biggest promotions in North America, and they do Europe shows as well. So yeah, that'd be a big step for you. That'd be that's where a lot of the pros go and make their mark and then potentially go fight all over the world.
And like a lot of other people as well, I do kind of want to follow this into possibly fighting for glory, even though it's more just kickboxing.
Right.
It's still something that you can use your skills and just transition that over. And that's, again, a bigger stage for people to get some recognition. So.
Yeah, and the biggest difference there being that in glory you can't hold on to the clinch. There's no elbows. But you are seeing a lot of good Thais transition from Muay Thai to glory. I mean, we just saw Sidichai lose to Marat Grigorian. He lost his belt, but he had defended it 3 times before and had beat, I think, Marat 3 or 4 times before with that Thai coming to kickboxing style. So it's certainly, there's a path laid out there for you.
Yeah, and another person who's been really good in Muay Thai and who's transitioned over very well has been Asa Tenpao.
Yes.
I mean, he's doing very, very
Florida.
Well. Yeah.
Florida Kickboxing Academy. I think that's his own gym that he runs.
Yep.
Yeah, and he has another fight coming up. I know Becca Irwin over, I want to say Texas.
Yep, she just transitioned into it. So, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of room to move over into it and use your skills. Even though you can't hold on to the clinch, you can enter in, you can throw some knees. And so you get to use certain things to still show that you know how to kickbox and use that sort of style of fighting. So.
Yeah. So tell me about kind of the expenses that are involved when you're approaching a Muay Thai career. I mean, you obviously, it's not your full-time job. You have a day job.
Yep.
your work for a university, so that I would assume gives you healthcare?
Yeah, that gives me
insurance.
healthcare, which is good.
That's huge.
In case anything happens, I can get myself taken care of, have my time to recover and relax. The main expense, I would say, is obviously the gym. You pay them to make sure that they get what they need so that they can take care of me. But also the diet is one of the biggest parts.
Tell me about that.
When I first started out, I was actually about 10 pounds lighter. My first 3 fights, I was walking around at about 120, and for the life of me, I couldn't put any weight on, but I was also not really eating the right foods. I wasn't having a proper clean diet. And so that's the biggest part, is making sure you're getting the right nutrients, and it's a clean diet, and you have to get enough of it.
Yeah.
And after
getting enough is tough.
Getting enough, it really is, because
when you're working out 4 hours.
And it costs. And so I had to find the right way to balance that out, and to get enough to find the right levels of what I need to get for this and what I need to get for this and everything.
Yeah.
And at this certain point, I cook most of my meals.
That saves money?
It saves money, and it lets me know exactly what I'm putting in my body.
Greater control.
Yeah, a lot more control. So that's a big thing there, is the diet. And then outside of that, it's just the gear or anything else kind of extra, any supplements. And I don't...
Do you supplement your diet? I mean, you mentioned cooking at home and focusing on the health and the ability to even get enough calories in because you're burning so many.
Yeah.
Do you find that you have to supplement with something like protein or anything else?
I do. I do it regularly. I use vegan protein. I just go get it from the grocery store for now. Some stuff there. And I use some BCAAs just to kind of help out with my general diet.
Branched chain amino acids?
Yep.
Okay.
Aside from that, all I'm really using is just some multivitamins and some fish oil, just to kind of help out with my joints and everything out in my heart health. But for the most part, everything else comes from my food, and I try to keep it a little bit more natural like that, rather than having 20 pills of this and this and this, or powders and things. So I try to keep it pretty simple if I can.
Yeah. And so do you buy all those supplements from the grocery store when you're doing that, or is that okay?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So just a monthly expense as you need it.
Pretty much, yeah. They don't always last about a month, but they're about.
Cool. So, and then I think the other big expense that maybe gets overlooked is the travel aspect, that you're not, this tournament, this TBAs National Muay Thai Tournament's not in your backyard. You have to travel to Des Moines, Iowa, which is an 11-hour drive for the whole weekend. So not only do you have to pay for the gas, your car, but the hotel there, and I'm sure there's an entrance fee. And
I keep telling my coworkers this, but I have to pay to fight right now. I'm not getting paid for it. I'm paying to go out and beat somebody up, or possibly have myself beat up. And so you have to look at it in a different sort of sense of how much do you want to do this, and how much is it worth it to you? Because again, I have to pay. I mean, this trip out here is costing about $500 or so, and I'm trying to limit it down. We've got an Airbnb that we're working on. Travel expenses, we're trying to group a couple of people together to try to save some things. Yeah. So, I mean, it still costs money, but it's worth it to me. Doesn't matter the cost, really.
Yeah, you're willing to invest that money for this pursuit of passion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's another good point that you kind of bring up there, is that this is a passion for us. Whereas in Thailand, where the sport came from, a lot of these people, it's not necessarily what they're passionate about. It. Some people are, but it's their national sport. They're born into it, really.
Yes.
Whereas over here in the States, it's something that not a lot of people want to do. So my drive is really the biggest factor in doing all this. I really want to do this. So.
Yeah, I wish I could attribute this correctly, but I was hearing someone speak about it recently, about how the Thais they fight for the money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they want. So there's no lack of motivation there. The motivation is, well, I need to get paid, I need to support my family, whereas foreigners coming over to Thailand to fight Phalanx, they're not necessarily driven by the money, so they have to find some kind of deeper meaning to be able to push themselves in that 4th and 5th round in a war of attrition when you're fighting a Thai that is trying to put food on the table for his kids.
And I think luckily for me, at least right now, being relatively young into the sport, I don't think I'll have any issue finding that motivation, because again, I want to do as much as I can. I want to see as much of the sport and just gain as much valuable experience with it all. So
yeah, that's a great perspective.
Yeah.
So take me back to the beginning of your martial arts journey. How did you first decide that, hey, I'm gonna go be a Muay Thai fighter and I'm gonna throw some elbows and knees?
Well, I would say the very first thing is that when I was a young kid, I wanted to do karate and stuff.
Yeah.
However, I grew up a little bit more poor than most people, so I didn't really get a chance to do it. I got to try it out, and then rest of my young and teenage years, I never really did anything.
Huh.
I kind of look at that as a good way, though, because then I didn't really bang up my body as much. I didn't really,
Get burnt out.
Yeah, I didn't get burnt out or cause too much wear and tear. So eventually, when I was 30 and I came out here to Colorado,
From where?
From Southern Maryland, actually.
Okay.
So I moved all the way out here. I just kind of reset my life and decided to change things.
Cool.
And before that point, I was a big UFC fan. So I was just watching it regularly every week, and I was looking at all the, the behind the scenes things like that.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, let me at least try training and see what that's like. I just want to train and do something fun. And then I came out here and I tried it. I got a free week at Easton, actually, and I was there 6 days out of the 7 days.
So you just lucked out. You just lucked out that you got this free week at Easton.
I really lucked out, yeah.
It's your gym now.
I chose the good gym, and it has been a perfect place. I wouldn't choose any other place. And yeah, from that point, I basically fell in love with the training. Even when I first started training, I didn't necessarily know if I was going to fight or if I wanted to. Yeah, and then it was maybe 4 months into my training, I had already made it to a certain level to where they said, "Hey, you're able to spar. You're able to do this fighting. We've got a smoker coming up. Would you be interested in that?" And I said, yeah. So I hopped in at that point, and I've literally not stopped since then.
Wow. Yeah, so, I mean, relatively a late start at 30 compared to Ty's that maybe doing it from 6 years old.
Compared to a lot of people, honestly.
Sure.
There's a lot more people in the sport nowadays than there were back then. So, like in our gym, we have a lot of young people. So I still look at it as I'm here for a good time, not a long time, because I'm a little bit older.
Yeah.
But I don't take that too literal. I mean, I'm still young in the sport, and I haven't damaged my body, so I'm learning at a great pace.
Yeah, you're younger in fighter miles.
Yeah, exactly. And those make a difference.
Absolutely. So, I mean, 2 years, it's a fairly short span to, I mean, really, you're talking about 2 years less 4 months, because that's when you first started fighting, to get 9 fights. I mean, that's significant.
Yeah.
So what do you attribute your ability to be so active and successfully active to?
I would say that's generally just my drive, my willingness to learn. I really want to learn more and more about the sport, more about what I can do, how this technique can work. Well, what can I do to set that up or get them to think I'm going to do this and then do something else? It's been my training partners, my coaches, my team, because seeing what they've done is a huge inspiration to me. So I started out the free week at Easton, but then I didn't get my membership at Easton for another 9 months.
Okay.
But at the time, they offered a free Saturday kickboxing class. So I would go to that. Once I found out, I was going to that every week for a good number of months straight. And one of my coaches there, Wes, who I didn't mention earlier, he was one of the biggest inspirations for me. Wes Argro, yeah. Knowing that he was fighting, seeing what he was accomplishing, and he was bringing back belts. He brought back a belt from the TBA from A class.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, that's amazing. I'm learning from somebody who's really good at this. And that drove me to try to do as good as I can at learning and trying to perform as well as I could.
That's great. So, I mean, clearly those are motivating factors. Do you think that you could identify what drives you to grind? I mean, that's essentially what you're doing. You're grinding 3 to 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, chasing this, pursuing this passion. So what do you think drives you to get up every day and go to work 9 to 5 and then still show up to the gym at 4 o'clock and get your running in?
I would say just to be the best person I can be, really. And that's something I've learned through the community that we have at Easton, that it's not just about going in there and beating people up or hitting or punching somebody. We're building a strong community where we do things outside of the gym, and inside of the gym we're working with each other. We're trying to get better and just trying to be better people every day. And we see a lot of that out of the owner of the gym, Elliot Marshall. He constantly has a shirt on that says "Be a good person." So we try to build good people, not just good fighters.
Absolutely. So anything on a more personal level that drives you, that you feel like getting up, or is it more just reaching your max potential?
It's really just my max potential.
Yeah.
I'm trying to do as good as I can to be the best that I can be, because before this, I did a little bit of sports and like soccer. And I bowled a little bit, but nothing too crazy. But yeah, I just want to be the best person I can be. And I kind of almost look at myself as like a Renaissance man in a sense of I try to do a little bit of this and that, and I want to be as good as I can and everywhere, really.
Yeah, and I think that's what's beautiful about people on a martial arts journey. Everybody's journey is individualistic,
Yep.
but
Yep.
still requires teamwork and coaches and help from people from the outside.
You really can't do this by yourself. If it was just me in the gym hitting a bag every day, I probably would not be anywhere near as skilled as I am right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were training for 4 months at Easton. You'd go and take your first smoker. Was that an in-house, like an in-gym smoker at Easton, or was this like a local get-together of
It was an
gyms?
in-house smoker.
Okay.
So my first two were in-house, and I'm really, really happy that we did that because my first opponent is somebody with the Easton gym.
I see.
And then the second opponent was one of our affiliates. So I got to see a little bit, somebody who doesn't necessarily train with us, train our style and everything, but who kind of does. We teach certain things over to them.
Sure.
So
you're getting a different look, but
yeah,
still
different
same
look,
curriculum.
but still same curriculum and everything. Then my third one, I finally went out of house, and I got to see, all right, what are these other gyms doing? And then from there, I've been just kind of bringing it up to the next level as much as I can.
Cool. And so that third smoker that was out of house, how does that work? Where was that?
That was at the Muay Thai of Colorado gym.
Okay.
And they just they do that the day of, which is different than how we run ours at Easton, where we kind of set it up almost like a normal fight camp. So we get everybody in camp, and we try to make the matchups and have them about a week to 2 weeks out. We'll have a matchup kind of set, and we say, okay, we got you a fight. This person is going to be. Whereas the Muay Thai Colorado ones, everybody just kind of shows up on the day, and he's like, all right, cool, let me weigh you, see what you're at, and then they put it within about 10 pounds or so that it's still a safe matchup. But there's no guarantee that you'll get a fight on that day. So.
Sure. Kind of Thai style, eye you up and make sure that you match well enough.
Yeah, there's a little intensity in the room. Like, you can kind of feel the difference between the Easton smoker and the out-of-house smokers.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good because you want that. You want to know what that feeling is like when you're going to be in a fight, or rather in a fight arena or in anything, and somebody sizing you up. So.
And that's the reality of these smokers, that they're really to give you experience, make you more comfortable in the ring, in a supportive environment. I don't know if a safe environment is the right word for it when you're fighting, but a supportive environment.
Yeah.
And where you have people looking over for you.
Yeah, and we do. So we still try to keep it safe, as safe as possible. Obviously, we're punching and kicking people, but again, if somebody's taking more damage, if it's an uneven matchup, we'll stop the match at that point, or something to make sure that it kind of tones it down. Say, hey, you just kind of relax a little bit and go easy on it, because again, we want everybody to get better at the same rate. Really.
Yeah. And so, with the smoker, for people that are unfamiliar, is there a winner or loser in that, or is it
no?
Okay.
So for smokers, there's no winner or loser. In some fights, obviously watching the fight, you can tell, well, that person did a lot better of a job. But the goal is that everybody, again, gets good experience and feels good about their experience going through it, whether they won or lost.
Yeah. So you did 3 or 4 smokers, and then you went to your first fight. What was the environment of your first kind of sanctioned Muay Thai fight like?
It was definitely different. It was the state tournament that we have here in Colorado.
Really? So your first sanctioned fight outside of a smoker was actually a tournament setting to win a state championship potentially?
Yeah, so I had fought the 3 smokers at that point, and then I came out to the state tournament. That was an interesting environment. We did our weigh-ins the day before, and then we came back the next day. Obviously, everybody separated at that point, so I didn't get to see any of my opponents. But again, like I said before, I don't really care who I'm fighting, because I need to be prepared for anything that comes at me. So we got out there. I was one of the earlier fights of the day. I think I was the 3rd fight of that day. And so I fought, and I ended up getting somebody who was a little bit shorter than me, and he was more of, I would say, a power puncher than anything. He tried to throw a lot of straight shots at me, and a couple of low kicks here and there, but he didn't really kick too often. And so because we're using Thai scoring and everything, kicks do a lot more damage. So I was throwing a lot more round kicks at him, and even though he was blocking them, it's still points for me.
Blocking him Dutch style, not
Dutch
with
style.
the
not with the check. Yeah. And so that was still getting points for me. So those kind of added up, and then I made it through that first fight.
Nice.
And
so you won your first fight?
I won my first fight officially, yeah.
Very nice.
And then at the tournament that day, it was all just a one-day event, so I had one more matchup that day, and it was from somebody who had fought also just that day. So it was a good little mix rather than getting somebody who was fresh or anything like that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, at the time, they didn't have knees allowed in the tournament, which is it's a shame, but they've changed that, and they've made things better in that sort of sense. But what happened to me is I got caught with a shot, and I went in and clinched him, and when I went to turn him, I threw a knee because it was kind of my instinct. We trained with knees all the time. And so they were very strict at the time, And so one knee is an immediate point.
Wow.
And this happened in the third round of a very close fight.
Oh, wow.
So at that point, I had 10, 15 seconds to throw everything, all or nothing in there. But unfortunately, I lost the round on points.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still a valuable experience because I walked away knowing, okay, you need to make sure you mind your rule set very, very closely and just keep your head about you.
Yeah, how do you do that in the middle of a fight, kind of adapt to a rule set when you're used to training knees and elbows, or is that something that you have to kind of prepare for in training?
It's something you should prepare for in training for sure. You should know what rule set you're going into and have to use what weapons and have to omit some weapons. Unfortunately, it hasn't always been that way. We've had some teammates in the past where literally the second before they step in the ring, the referee tells them, hey, you can't do this. And they're like, well, what? That's what we were told we can use. Yeah. So things like that, you kind of have to keep your head about you and just do what you can to, again, follow the rules that they give you. Even if it's last minute like that, you got to do what you can. And that may not always be the best for you. But,
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was your fourth and fifth fight. So where'd the other four come in there?
So after the fourth and fifth fight, I took a little bit of a break, kind of enjoyed my summer for a little bit, and then I got back to it. I believe in September I had another smoker, and I ran into a pretty good opponent there, somebody who I knew from the local scene. I saw him on some of the smaller shows, and I actually knew at the time that he was going to be fighting for the amateur WBC belt here in Colorado.
Oh, wow. So this smoker was almost just like a tune-up fight for him to prepare for the title?
Yeah, he was just kind of getting himself, staying in shape, staying active and all that. And unfortunately for me, it didn't go my way. Not that he necessarily beat me or anything, but I got caught with a quick shot in the first round that stunned me. And that was some good experience too, though, because I had never actually been stunned or anything in my fight.
Yeah.
So while I lost that fight there, while they stopped it, no winner, no loser necessarily, but I know I lost that fight. That gave me the experience of knowing, okay, you need to keep your head together. Even when it's hard like that, you need to know, what can you do? Keep your guard up, keep yourself, locked and controlled, control the space, So it went back to some of the fundamentals of what you need to do in a fight.
Almost lets you see the importance of why you're working those fundamentals.
Exactly, yeah, it really did.
Huh. So what does it feel like to get stunned? I mean, what does that do to you in the middle of the fight? What are you thinking? I mean, are you thinking?
Yeah, you're definitely thinking, but it's hard to really describe it. But sure. the way I've kind of put it is, what happened is he threw a kick, and I caught the kick, and I went in and I stepped in to try to punch him with my cross. And as I did that, he just kind of put his hand up, and I ran into his punch. So I have a different angle, and you can kind of see it actually snapped my head back. From that point right there, it's like my vision kind of went upside down, backwards. It was all blurred for a second. I wouldn't say I was seeing stars, but for a second there, I had no idea what I was actually seeing. So I was stumbling back, and then as soon as I came back to, about 1 second later, all I saw was him right in front of me, and there was a hook coming right at me. So it was too late for me to really adjust to that. But yeah, it was an interesting feeling. And
absolutely. Something that you probably have to experience, though, to be able to understand what it takes to fight through it.
And that's not something you can necessarily prepare for in a certain sense. And if it happens to you, I mean, the way I kind of look at it, it was, I don't want to say a lucky punch, but the way that he hit me, it's not something you can really prepare for.
Right. And I think, a big part of it is that in fighting, the whole reason that you see a lot of these Muay Thai guys with so many fights is because there's so many different experiences you can get in each fight. So
a lot.
This is just one more experience that you're going to have to go through at some point. So it's good to get it out of the way at the beginning of the career and understand how to move forward.
And again, one thing I really enjoy about Muay Thai and the way the Thais look at it, it's not necessarily about wins and losses.
Right.
Obviously people are trying to win the fight, but you're there for the experience.
Absolutely.
You're trying to get better. And so I'm using those two losses right there to say, okay, what did I not do right? What can I do to improve upon this and that?
Yeah, that's such a great point. I think that maybe fans don't recognize, just because in boxing it's so sacred to have a undefeated record, that they're a lot of times padding the record until they're 20 fights into their career before they start really facing people.
Yeah.
Some people wait even longer. So, MMA is kind of stuck somewhere in between, right? They have that wrestler mentality where just keep going and get experience and compete as often as possible. But then they also see these boxers or these people coming over from boxing with these perfect records, and it is attractive, and it's an easy selling point and promoting point. But
But if
Muay Thai contrasts very greatly because people like a famous person is Manchai. Manchai has 300 fights and 200 wins. So that means he has 100 losses. That means he's losing 1 out of every 3 times he steps in the ring, but he still steps in. He's the number 2, number 3 ranked person in the world at his weight class. So Muay Thai is very different in that experience.
It really is. And so then from there, that was my 6th fight, I believe. So I ended up by going. I went back to another smoker. Both of those were smokers. And in that smoker, I actually ended up fighting the guy that I fought in the state tournament in the final match. So it was my first time at a rematch. So I got to get that experience as well.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting one. Now we got to use knees. So, of course, I used my knees. And I ended up stopping the fight. He ended up, I think he just kind of took too much damage.
Wow.
I kind of took his balance away from him. So after a certain point, he lost an 8 count. So
Was that your first finish?
that was my first finish there.
Cool.
So,
What does that feel like?
it was good. I mean, I wasn't really, looking for the finish necessarily, but the fact that it came, it felt really, it means to me that I know what I'm doing out there. I'm comfortable with my skills, and so it kind of gave me an area to say, okay, I'm good at this, so let me see what I can do to continue improving upon that.
Yeah. So that was your first finish, and then what's after that?
So after that one, I ended up going back to the sanctioned fights.
Okay.
So that one was in December, and then in January, actually I think it was November, sorry. And then in January, I went and did the 5280 card. That was my first jump over to a 5280 card, kind of the more of a show sort of feel.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a finish there or anything, but I did pretty good in basically controlling my opponent. I outworked him to the point where he was a lot more tired, and I had a unanimous decision on that one.
Nice.
So that was a good feel as well.
And was that your most recent fight?
No, I actually had one more since then.
Okay.
And it was a third match, a rubber match actually, with the guy who from the state tournament finals. So
nice.
on paper, he has the one win on me, and then I had the one unofficial win on him.
Right.
So it was a good chance to go ahead and see what happens in that sort of case, because we'd fought each other twice. We got to face off for the first time because we hadn't done that in either case.
Cool.
So that was a good feel. And then actually before the fight, he and his coaches came up to me and asked if I wanted to go ahead and fight without shin guards. And so at that point, I said, okay, I don't mind, but let's see what my coaches say.
Sure.
So I asked them about it. They pulled me over to the side. They talked to me real quick, and then we said, yeah, let's do it. So that was my first time fighting without shin guards. So again, just adding a new experience to kind of every fight to kind of build up everything.
What was the difference, did you feel like, in the fight between having shin guards in previous fights and not having shin guards in this fight?
I would say not a whole lot, really. I mean, obviously you're going to feel it later on, but in the fight, it felt a little bit more free, I would say. Like, I didn't really feel anything bothering me as far as, like, the shin guards moving around or anything like that, getting stuck. So I could tell that some of the strikes were hurting a little bit more, causing a little bit more damage to him or to me.
Yeah.
But overall, it was nothing. It didn't really make that big of a difference. It felt good.
So you don't feel like you felt it that much different during the fight. What about after the fight?
After the fight, I definitely felt it.
Yeah.
I had a couple of bumps and bruises. I ended up breaking my foot in that fight because of not having shin guards, and because one of my biggest problems early on was I was kicking more with my foot, not measuring as well, instead of getting all the way in and hitting with my shin. And this was mostly on low kicks, so anytime I would try to hit him, I hit him with a few good shots, but again, hitting with all foot, you have so many bones that you can break in there.
Yeah.
So, and that just gave me the lesson of trying to work on my measuring, making sure that my shots are set up properly so that I can land it the way I want to, rather than glancing blows or anything like that.
And then A-class in Colorado, when you would, after the TBA tournament, you'll be in A-class. So is that no shin guards?
Yeah, at that point, it'll be no shin guards. Now, I believe, obviously, it'll be matched up to whoever you're with. So if they're still in B-class, I would be fighting them at a B-class setting. But I believe after a certain point, if they've had enough fights, we'd be fighting A-class style, which would be no headgear, no shin guards, and elbow pads and gloves is the only thing.
Wow, very cool.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, that'll be a new experience for you as well.
Again, yeah.
Cool. So if you could think back to the beginning of your career, 2 years back wasn't too long ago.
No.
So what were your goals, do you think, when you first stepped into the gym?
I wanted to get in shape, or rather stay in shape. I was never really out of shape. I was exercising before I came here to Colorado. But I wanted to stay in shape, and I think in a sort of sense, I didn't really know it, but I wanted to find a good community for martial arts to belong to as well.
Yeah.
Because I did a lot of watching UFC and everything, but I didn't have a lot of people that I could relate to in that sort of sense. So looking to find a good community, yeah.
Cool. And so how do you think that's changed over time now, going into this TBAs? Maybe your short-term goal is to win the TBA National Muay Thai Tournament, but what would you say your goals are now as far as your martial arts journey or your career in general?
It's still just to take it as far as I can. I've got an interest in MMA. I think at least before I'm done with my full career of fighting, I do want to step into a cage and fight an MMA fight. Now, that being said, I chose Muay Thai and everything because I feel like striking is the thing that attracts me the most. I'd rather be a striker than I would be a grappler or anything. But if I want to do MMA, I'd have to learn my grappling defenses and things like that. So I've got an interest in following that pursuit as well. And then again, just kind of building the community, kind of helping to do what I can to give back to the community and to find more people to bring into the community, find more people in the community that I can just relate to and everything.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
So if you had to think of a tip that may have helped you out younger in your career, but a tip for a young aspiring fighter, what would that be?
Just stay focused. Stay disciplined on it. You got to keep it up because you're not going to get better if you're only going once a week and you're trying to do this, or you're bouncing around between jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and things like that. Take a little bit of time to focus on one discipline, and then just kind of work on that before you start stepping on certain things.
Yeah.
The way we kind of do that with striking is like a lot of people will say, well, what if I want to do a little bit of southpaw work? And they told me early on when I told them that, they said, no, you need to work on one thing and get good at that before you start trying to mix it in, because otherwise you might get good a little bit, but you're not going to shoot up and really develop your skills until you focus.
Sure. I think there's a Bruce Lee quote that goes something like, don't fear the man that practiced 10,000 kicks, fear the man that practiced one kick 10,000 times.
That's right, yep.
Cool. So that's kind of what you guys live by in your training.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, Chino, and good luck in your upcoming TBA National Muay Thai Tournament. Hopefully you win that.
Yep.
And what weight class will you be fighting at for that?
I'll be fighting at 127.
So B class 127.
Yep, and that's featherweight for Muay Thai.
Featherweight, okay.
Yep.
So go check them out, support Chino, and how can people follow you online?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram at Digital Chino. I post a lot of just random pics, or I try to post some of my fight pictures and stuff up there as well. But you can find me on Facebook, just Chino Dean. Pretty simple.
Cool. So go follow him, Chino Dean. We'll have you sign the banner along with the rest of the fighters on your way out.
Awesome.
And for our viewers and listeners, thank you very much. And check us out on YouTube. Go hit subscribe at The Prize Fighting Business. We are on Instagram at PrizeFightBiz and Facebook at The Prize Fighting Business Show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.